August 12th, 30 BC. Alexandria. 10 minutes from now, Cleopatra will be dead. Not defeated. Not executed. Cornered. This didn't begin in this room. It began 10 days earlier, when every exit started disappearing, one by one, quietly, precisely. No armies, no chaos, just pressure tightening, until there was nothing left to hold, nothing left to reach for, nothing left worth surviving for. You think empires fall in battle. They don't. They fall when every choice becomes a trap, when every path leads to the same end. That's how this was done. Not by force, but by design. And the most brutal part? The weapon wasn't an army. It wasn't a blade. It was her son. Not used to kill her, but to make sure she would destroy herself. By the time she sat in that chamber, dressed like a queen, the outcome was already sealed. No escape, no negotiation, no future. Just one final choice in a game already lost, and even that wasn't a choice at all. August 1st, 30 BC. 10 days before the end. Alexandria's harbor is burning. Not a battle, an aftermath. Smoke where an empire used to stand. A year earlier, they had everything. 500 warships. Armies from a dozen kingdoms. Power stacked so high, it looked untouchable. Then, it collapsed in minutes. Not hours, minutes. At Actium, nothing held. Ships didn't fight, they broke. Formations dissolved. Commanders ran. Fire spread faster than orders. And in the middle of it, Antony turned away, followed Cleopatra, left the fleet to die behind him. That was the moment it ended. Everything after that was just delay. Allies didn't hesitate. They vanished. Kings who swore loyalty pulled their troops overnight. Senators switched sides before the smoke cleared. Gold meant for soldiers disappeared into private hands. No speeches, no resistance, just quiet abandonment. By the time they reached Egypt, there was nothing left to command. No army, no loyalty, no leverage. Only the illusion of power, already rotting from the inside. This is where the trap begins. Not with defeat, but with absence. No allies, no options, no way out. A year later, Octavian's legions stood outside Alexandria. There was no siege. The city collapsed from the inside. Antony's cavalry was first riding out in perfect formation, not to fight, but to switch sides. Then the infantry followed. Then the fleet sailing out only to surrender before a single command was given. No battle, just abandonment, one layer at a time. Inside the palace, power didn't fall. It evaporated. Doors locked. Voices dropped. Men who once stood beside kings disappeared overnight. Guards walked away from their posts without looking back. Antony wandered through empty halls, still giving orders to an army that no longer existed. Cleopatra didn't panic. She withdrew, not to escape, but to control what was left. She sealed herself inside her mausoleum, stone walls, one entrance, no windows. A tomb designed long before this moment now turned into her final position. Inside, she gathered everything that still had value: gold, jewels, centuries of power condensed into objects. Then she closed the doors. This wasn't surrender. It was a calculation. Burn it all, and Octavian wins nothing. Keep it, and maybe she still has leverage. But outside those walls, one truth was already clear. She was no longer fighting for a kingdom. She was choosing how it ends. What she did next wasn't emotion. It was a move. One message. One lie. She was dead. No explanation. No warning. Just enough to snap what was already breaking. Antony didn't question it. Didn't verify. Didn't think. He gave one order to be killed. Even that failed. His servant chose death over obedience. So Antony finished it himself. Steel into flesh. Not clean. Not quick. A slow collapse. Bleeding out on the floor while everything he built died with him. Then the truth arrived. Cleopatra was alive. Too late. What followed wasn't chaos. It was precision. His body was carried to her mausoleum. The doors stayed shut. She didn't open them, not for love, not for mercy. Opening them meant losing the last thing she still controlled. So she changed the rules. Ropes dropped from above. A dying general, once the most powerful man in Rome, was dragged up a wall like cargo. No ceremony, no dignity, just weight, blood, gravity pulling him down while she pulled him up. Cleopatra and two women hauling what was left of an empire through a window. He died there, in her arms, inside a tomb never meant for the living, and in that moment, it ended. No army, no allies, no kingdom left to bargain with. Only one woman sealed inside stone while outside. A man waited who had already decided exactly how her story would end. What Octavian did next wasn't strategy, it was control, stripped down to its coldest form. He didn't want Cleopatra dead. Dead queens don't walk. Dead queens don't rewrite wars. For years, Rome had been tearing itself apart, Roman blood on Roman hands. That couldn't be the ending. He needed a cleaner story. A foreign enemy, a defeated queen. Cleopatra alive would turn civil war into victory. Cleopatra dead would leave him with nothing, and he knew exactly who she was. This wasn't a cornered ruler waiting to be taken. This was a woman who had survived Caesar, outmaneuvered Rome, rebuilt power from collapse. Give her a second, and she wouldn't be captured, she would erase herself. No body, no treasure, no triumph. So he didn't rush her. He tightened the space around her. No siege engines. No fire at the gates. Just silence closing in. He sent Proculus. Not a general. Not a threat. A familiar name. A voice Antony once trusted. Someone who could stand outside that sealed door and sound like reason instead of force. He spoke calmly. No demands. No clear promises. Just enough to slow her thinking. Just enough to hold her in place. That hesitation was the breach. While Cleopatra stood at the door, weighing every word, the real move was already climbing the walls, hands on stone, bodies moving where Antony had been dragged hours before. No noise, no warning. By the time she turned, they were inside, too fast to react, too precise to stop. Whatever she reached for, it ended before it began. And then came the part that mattered most. Nothing. No chains forced onto her wrists. No blows. No shouting. Because violence gives you something to fight. Octavian gave her nothing to resist. She was returned to the palace. The same rooms. The same silk. The same view she once ruled over. But every doorway held eyes. Every servant was searched. Every object stripped of risk. He didn't cage her. He removed everything outside the cage. No escape. No leverage, no last move to play, only time. Time to sit inside a world that looked unchanged and realize every path out of it was gone. Because Octavian didn't defeat Cleopatra in battle, he built a reality where every choice she had left led exactly where he wanted. The rooms were untouched, gold still gleamed, silk still fell the same way it always had. Servants moved on command. Meals arrived warm, precise, familiar. Nothing looked different. That was the point. Because everything that mattered had already changed. Every door was watched. Every movement tracked. Every servant searched before and after crossing the threshold. Food inspected. Objects examined. Even silence monitored. Outside her chamber, a guard stood with one order that overruled everything else. She must not die. Not mercy. Not punishment. Control without fingerprints. Octavian didn't need her broken. He needed her intact, breathing, recognizable. A queen who could still stand when Rome demanded a spectacle. No bruises, no scars, no visible damage. Just a living symbol waiting to be displayed. 3 days later, he entered. No guards, no armor, just presence. He sat across from her like this was still a negotiation, like this was still a world where she had options. His voice stayed level, calm, measured. He spoke of futures, of arrangements, of outcomes that never fully formed into promises. No threats, not one. He didn't need them. Cleopatra understood the game. She had survived it for decades, so she responded the only way she knew how. Numbers, assets. Inventories of a kingdom reduced to coordinates and weight. She offered structure, stability, cooperation. Every word placed carefully, buying time she didn't have, building leverage that no longer existed. He listened. He nodded. He thanked her. And he took everything. He returned again. Same tone, same rhythm, same questions. Each time, she gave a little more. Each time, something else disappeared. What felt like negotiation was removal. What looked like progress was exposure. She thought she was bargaining. He was inventorying her life. Every detail she revealed became a map. Every name, a target. Every resource, already gone before she understood she had surrendered it. Outside, her world was being erased. Inside, it went silent. No messages, no updates, no voices except the ones allowed through the door. Alexandria could have burned again, and she would never know. Egypt could have already belonged to someone else. This wasn't isolation. It was control of reality itself. So she made a move. She stopped eating. No declaration, no demand, just absence. Plates returned untouched, strength fading on her own terms. If she couldn't control the board, she would remove herself from it, deny him the ending he needed. The response was immediate. No force, no anger. Just a single fact, placed exactly where it would break her. Her children were in his custody. Nothing else was said. It didn't need to be. She understood instantly. Death was no longer hers to choose. It had already been moved somewhere else. She ate again that same day. And just like that, it was over. Every path closed. Die, and they suffer. Live, and she becomes a spectacle. Resist, and she disappears slowly behind walls that will never open. No chains, no violence, no visible damage. Just a room where every outcome ends the same way. August 12th, 30 BC, didn't end with a defeat. It ended with a decision. Cleopatra didn't run. She didn't beg. She didn't wait to be paraded through Rome as proof of someone else's victory. She chose the only thing Octavian couldn't control her ending. Gold on her body, crown set in place. No chains, no spectacle, no permission. Everything else had already been taken. Her army, gone. Her allies, erased. Her son, marked for death before she could save him. Every path closed, one by one, until nothing remained that resembled choice. So she removed herself from the board. Not emotion, not panic, precision. Octavian would become Augustus, rewriting the war into something cleaner, something Rome could celebrate. Egypt would fall. Its wealth would be counted. Its future reassigned. He would take everything that could be taken, except her. Because power isn't just measured by what you control. It's defined by what you're denied. Cleopatra understood that at the very end. When every move had been stripped away, when every outcome led to loss, she found the one space he couldn't reach. Not escape, not survival, control. She died dressed as a queen, not displayed as one. Octavian conquered her kingdom. He erased her future. He secured his empire, but he never got to show her. And in a victory built on being seen, that absence was the one thing he could never fix.